and welcome. Okay, I'll start that again. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm Ivy Lewis, Director of Public Projects and Services, Department of Public Works. I would like to acknowledge Mayor Thompson and Councilmember Sadiq, Ward 4. I think we were expecting Councilmember Lingua. Has he joined us? Okay, Councilmember Lingua. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting on the town's trolley trail lighting project. You might have noticed that the meeting is now being recorded, and I believe, Jessica, being loaded directly to the cloud. The purpose of this meeting is to present the conceptual lighting plan for the trolley trail and receive your comments and questions. The plan was prepared by the town's on-call engineer on the project, Jeff Weaver, who's here with us this evening, who will present the plan, and together we'll answer your questions. I do want to note what
It appears that Ms. Lewis is frozen. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
So let's give her a moment. And Councilmember Lingua just contacted me. He said he'll be here in just a few minutes.
Maybe he froze Director Lewis's video to give himself a little more time.
Okay, and I'm going to address the question in the chat now. Thanks. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes. So Ms. Lewis is trying to get back on. There was a comment in the chat. I can address that, saying the meeting notification indicated the plan was on the town's website. I don't see it. If you actually click the link in the meeting notification where it has the town's website, that'll take you directly to the plan. So if you click on that link, it takes you to the plan. And while Ms. Lewis attempts to reconnect, I'm going to ask Mr. Jeff Weaver, who's with Mead and Hunt, who is the engineer who designed the lighting plan, to review the lighting plan. We will be having plenty of opportunity for questions. Probably have Mr. Weaver start with kind of an overview, and if you could hold your questions initially until we have a good understanding of the plan itself, and then we can go from there. Mr. Weaver?
Yes. Okay. You want me to share my screen? I could probably bring the plan up. Let me see here.
Please do. Ryan, can you make that happen?
Let me see.
Yes, you should be able to share it.
Can everyone see the plan that's on my screen? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Jeff Weaver. I'm with Mead and Hunt. I basically I'm the project manager for street lighting for Mead and Hunt. I have 37 years of experience designing and managing street lighting projects, basically anything exterior lighting. I'm also a member of the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, and I'm a member of the Illuminating Engineering Subcommittee for Standard Practice. So basically, I guess we can start from south to north. So the town has asked us to look at a conceptual lighting layout in which we would utilize the existing power company utility poles to install fixtures on those poles. It's the majority of the trail. There is some areas where we do not have utility poles available, so we're recommending that we install town-owned pedestrian style lighting fixtures, which is basically this fixture that's on the screen now. So we did a photometric analysis where we looked at the light levels, projected light levels, I should say, throughout the trail with different locations or layouts of fixtures. And what I mean by that is we looked at positioning the fixtures on the utility poles in different directions to try to minimize spill lighting. So ultimately, the layout you're seeing right now is what we've come up with, which we feel is probably the best we can do with the utility company provided light fixtures. So to summarize, we're going to have 9 town-owned pedestrian style lighting fixtures are going to be very close or near the town center. I can zoom in here. And these particular fixtures you're seeing here with the round or asymmetrical pattern is the pedestrian fixtures. There's going to be the 5 of them south of Queensberry Road, and there will also be 4 more north of 410 on the trail, just at the beginning, just past the overpass. After that, everything goes back to utility company provided lights. And of the utility company provided lights, there's 33 utility company owned fixtures, I should say. There's a number of twin arm fixtures which are towards the south, which is right in this section here. I guess it's just north of Harrison Avenue, heading towards Queensberry, but it actually stops right at Cleveland. And that's the extent of the twin arm structures. So we'd have fixtures on both sides of the path because the path itself is split in this section. From the remaining portion of the path has 21 single arm mounted fixtures on these utility poles. There's also, I would like to point out that there are a number of existing utility company owned lights on utility poles that we're not recommending touching. We're not doing anything with them, but they're there. We modeled those also into see what kind of light levels they would provide, and also to see if there was any way of eliminating some of the lighting that we're adding, by using these. But as you can see, the pattern of illumination here, it's very limited, so it doesn't even reach the path. So let me see, is there anything else I want to point out? The lighting goes from all the way north, all the way up to Wells Run Place, where the developer has already installed a number of pedestrian lights. And that's basically where we'll tie into the path. As far as the light levels, what we did was we looked at, let me go back here. So we looked at the Illuminating Engineering Society's recommendations for lighting on a path. And basically what we did was we determined that the path would have a high nighttime pedestrian usage. And Illuminating Engineering Society, the RP8 Table 5 recommends for a high pedestrian access 1 foot candle illumination all falling on the path with a uniformity ratio of 4:1. And what that means is when we say uniformity, what we mean is how consistent or how even the lighting is. We don't want peaks and valleys. We don't want to have areas where we have bright spots, and we also don't want to have areas where we have that's dark. We definitely don't want these dark areas because that would allow, somebody potentially to hide in the shadows, and then they could, attack somebody on the path at night. The layout that we developed, again, using utility company poles, did allow some light spill on some of the residential property lines, as you can see on my screen right now. Mainly to slightly south of Queensberry. There's a couple, I think there's a number of homes, maybe 6 homes, where there is some spill light on the residential property line. There's also an area north of Queensberry. I think it's a total of 3 homes that also has, and that's what these red numbers are indicating, there's some spill light on the residential property. I do want to point out, as you can see here, the pattern of illumination, again, is very circular. Along this particular residential property line, it's not as bad. I mean, it's actually very minor, to be totally honest with you. The problem really lies to the south, where we have the twin arm structures. There's a lot of spill lighting that happens in this section. One of the problems with this is we're restricted by what we have available. I mean, the utility company poles are already there today, where there's not a lot we can do about that if we're going to use them. One of the ways we could mitigate this issue would be to provide shielding on the fixtures. Potentially, we could have the vendor possibly change the optics in the fixture, but I would caution, since these fixtures are provided by the power company, we lose some control over what we can do. The power company really has to say. They may, and this is the particular fixture they keep in stock, so they may not be willing to change out the optics or provide a different fixture. So there's a good chance we're stuck with this particular fixture if we go this option. I guess the third way to mitigate this would be to just not even put these in and just put in a pedestrian style lighting system consisting of the town's Washington Globe style fixture. Now, I would caution with that particular option. I think right now, and I'm not sure if Ivy's on the call yet, but I think the cost Pepco's provided for their lighting is around $48,000. If we were to install a pedestrian only style lighting system, that cost is probably around upwards of $500,000. So it's a considerable amount more with a pedestrian style lighting system.
I am back on the call. My apologies, everyone. Could you explain why the cost would be so much substantially higher if we go with pedestrian style lighting or town-owned lighting along the trail? I mean, it could be obvious to some, but not to others.
Yes. So basically, let me tell you the difference. So when we have this type of situation, we're using a utility pole that's already there today. The power company comes in and they install a lighting arm and a fixture on that utility pole, and then they charge the town basically a tariff or a lease fee. So the cost is not that great. That there's initial upfront cost, and then there's a monthly cost for the energy use and the cost for leasing the equipment. When we're talking about a pedestrian lighting system, what happens here is we're paying for the fixture, the pole, all the underground infrastructure. In other words, the conduit and the hand boxes, electrical cables, a source of control. In other words, a lighting cabinet that would turn on and off the lights. Also a source of power to energize these lights as well. So all these components come together. They create a much more expensive lighting system. But with that type of lighting system, there's obviously a lot more flexibility that you can provide any number of types of fixtures out here. We can go back to the vendor and they can change the optics in this fixture to actually, they can make this instead of a circular pattern like we see. Let's go back here, like we see here, we can actually make it more like a oval pattern, something that falls almost directly on the path. It cuts it off. There's not a lot of this spill lighting. So that's the benefit when you build your own lighting system instead of using the power company. We're very restricted by what the power company provides. Does that answer your question?
That certainly, yes, provides more detail to what would be involved in extending town lights along that section of the pole and the wiring and all the infrastructure that goes along with it. And so another downside of that is we have a number, I don't know the exact number, if you do call it out, Jeff, of the number of poles along the entire length of the trolley trail in Riverdale Park. And so to introduce town lighting or intermix it in with that for a different lighting pattern and illumination would just create a lot of clutter along the pole clutter, if you will, along the trail.
It would definitely create a lot of clutter. There's also the concern with color temperature. If you're going to mix match with what Pepco has and what the town has, you're definitely going to have two different color patterns. The Pepco's is a 4,000 color temperature. And let me explain what I mean by that. So basically, when we talk about color temperature, we're talking about how warm feeling or how whitish the light is. So basically, if you're in a 2,000 color temperature, that's more yellowish. And then from that point going up to say 5,000, you get into like a bluish color. Okay. Right now, Pepco again is 4,000. The town's fixture is 5,700. It's very white. It's almost bluish. It is quite bluish. So that the lighting is more aesthetically pleasing, you want to keep the color temperature preferably all the same, same temperature. I do want to caution one thing, and this happens all the time. People get confused with color temperature and pattern of illumination. Pattern illumination, which we're seeing here, this distribution pattern. Basically, IES defines there's 5 different patterns of illumination, type 1 through type 5. And type 5, and a quick rundown, would be a very circular pattern. A type 1 would be very kind of like we're seeing here. This is more of a type 3, but it's type 1 is more very elongated. Now, the Illuminating Engineering Society has actually gone away from calling light patterns calling these light patterns now. Now we're using bug ratings. Okay, so it's basically looking at how much light is thrown forward, how much light is thrown backwards, and how much light is allowed to go up in the sky. Okay. But I do want to, I want to caution I don't want to get confused when we talk about this color temperature. I don't want people to think, everyone to think that this has anything to do with this pattern illumination. It absolutely does not. Pattern illumination is driven by the lumens that this fixture produces. And there's a number of components that actually drive that. The optics in the fixture, the ballast, and how many milliamps that fixture could is operating on actually creates how much this light falls forward or how much light goes in a, a elongated pattern left and right, or even on the what we call the house side or behind it. Okay, as you can see here, this pole in particular, here's the utility pole, the light's facing this direction, and all the light is facing is forward of the fixture. But there is some light that we call house lighting that falls behind it. But again, this is Pepco's fixture. This is what they provide.
I do want to point out that in the current plan, there, as you mentioned, but I just want to reiterate that in the current plan, there are two color temperatures. Within the town center and where the new pedestrian lighting or town-owned poles are proposed is one temperature in a concentrated area. And then on either side of that, it's the lower color temperature of the Pepco light. So it's not so variable along the trail, but it does vary right before and right after or around the town center, I should say.
Correct.
The town center, and it makes sense, high pedestrian area. We have a lot of locations of interest. We have that lighting there now within the town center, and to a less extent under the overpass. That would be extended a little beyond that where the new lights are being proposed, and then it would drop down to the, if you will, the warmer temperature on the Pepco poles in both directions.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, that's correct. Everything that's on the plan here, everything that's in this area that we're not showing because it's all existing. There's all town-owned lights in this area here. These are the pedestrian lights, and there's actually a few, I think 2 or 3 that are actually underneath this underpass here as well. So then when the path starts off on the north, it kind of ties into that same style of lighting until we get to the utility poles, and then we transition to just utility company lighting to the north. The same thing from the south side. As you can see where Queensbury is, there's existing pedestrian style lanes that actually run up and down Queensbury, as well as onto the match line here, the town center. And then to the south, we tie in with some of these pedestrian lights before we go into the utility company lighting. And the main reason we did this, again, we don't have any utility poles in this area that we can utilize for putting lights, put utility company lights on. If we don't do something, this whole section would be basically dark, this path. And the same thing to the north, the start of the path in this area would be dark because we just don't have any telephone poles to utilize. And by the way, I zoomed in on it. This chart up here actually gives you the color temperatures for both the fixtures. So this is the Pepco light over here, 150 watt LED, has 8,500 lumens, and again it's 4,000 color temperature. And then the towns is a lower wattage fixture, 70 watts, 7,325 lumens, and it has 5,700 color temperature, which is more bluish. And again, this is the patterns of illumination I was talking about, the type 3 and the type 5. And this would be the type 5, the round, and then the type 3, more I guess I want to say egg-shaped. It's an easy way to say it. I guess generally, I think that's it. I mean, other than, I will say, I want to point out there, as far as the light levels on the path, we do, with the layout that we have right now, we're slightly above what is the minimum recommended. So the minimum recommended is 1 foot candle. We're 1.336. So we meet what Illuminating Engineering Society recommends. And then the uniformity. This is a maximum number. So we don't want to be over 4. Because if we go over 4, then we'll start seeing some dark spots or bright spots. So right now we're actually 3.4. So we meet what's recommended. Okay, so the lighting system that we're proposing here pretty much meets every aspect or what the town is looking for, except we've got these couple spot areas of light trespass or light spill lighting on these residential property lines. So, did you, I don't know if you wanted me to, if there was anything else you wanted me to add to that, Ivy?
I'm going to say no, and maybe if questions come up, you could address, provide information, additional information. I did want to, since I fell off, that was a first to lose internet access completely. I did want to make sure to share with attendees sort of the objectives and the thinking behind, or what guided the effort to prepare this plan. Clearly making the trolley trail safe for all users and encouraging increased use of the trail, including after dark, to businesses and other points of interest, are major aspirations of this project, as is minimizing the impact on adjacent properties. Some of the other objectives are using energy efficient lighting, establishing appropriate light levels adjacent to single family homes, and utilizing existing poles to the extent possible to avoid pole clutter, while at the same time only using a minimum number, or the minimum number, of Pepco poles and supplemental town lights necessary to adequately light the trail. I will mention that these goals and objectives are consistent with a study I learned about just a couple of weeks ago. It was a crime prevention through environmental design study completed by the College Park City University Partnership in 2017. The study focused on making the trail safe along its entire length through College Park, Riverdale Park, and Hyattsville. And as we know at this point, except for in the Riverdale Park Station community, where the last section of the trail was built and lit over the last 12 months, most of the section of the trail in town is without lighting. So I was happy to learn that our objectives for this project, prepared in maybe 2020, were the same as recommended, are considered in the study that was done in 2017. That was in fact focused on crime prevention through environmental design. There are other elements to those recommendations and other activities that we're engaged in and are planning in town, but this is the phase that would light the trolley trail. I guess, and with that, I'll take questions.
And Ivy, there's a number of questions in the chat box.
Okay.
So if you could take a look in chat and respond to those.
Okay. Let me start from the beginning. When is the proposed installation date? The town, as Jeff mentioned, has to do all of the design of the wiring and supporting infrastructure for the town lights. So that has caused us to break the projects in two parts if we proceed according to the conceptual lighting plan. So we would get out the box first with the Pepco lights on the 33 lights on, I think it's 21 Pepco poles. Once the town signs a cost letter that Pepco has already provided, and to pay the $48,000 of the cost of installing the lights on the poles, they'll get started, and we could expect to have them fully installed within 6 to 8 months. The timeline for getting the town lights installed has not been established. We have to first determine whether the existing infrastructure, for example, there's a control box in the town center. We have to determine the capacity of that to support additional lighting. And if not, we'd have to do the engineering on installing another control box and extending wire to the lights, or multiple, maybe pedestals, rather than the control box at the size that's in the town center on either side of the town center to support the lights that are proposed there. So we could definitely have the Pepco lights in place before the end of the year, maybe even the end of September, if we get a cost letter signed within the next couple of weeks. And I would be venturing a guess to determine when the town lights would. Ideally, we'd have those in before the end of the year. Next question, or any comments on that? Okay. So what light is more energy efficient? We're proposing the use of LEDs. Do you want to address the other options here? So the town, okay, go ahead.
I could just point out real quickly, if you looking at the chart, The Pepco light is actually more efficient, but just slightly. It's actually, the Pepco light has a 112 efficiency and the town's light is actually 107. And that's because they're both LED light fixtures. If these were incandescent or high pressure sodium or something like that, would definitely, this number would be way down in the 60 or less range. Excuse me.
Okay, the next question, what is the height difference between the pedestrian lights from the town and the Pepco lights?
So the Pepco lights are generally installed around 26 feet. That can vary slightly depending on what the power company has on their utility pole, but they do have a designated area on the pole that's around 26 feet. It can be upwards as high as 30 feet. But that's really up to them to decide. The town's pole, and I believe it was, let me make sure here, I believe it's 16 feet, I think. Wait, is that right? No, that's not right. It's on the chart here. I believe it was 14 feet, but I want to make absolutely sure. We put it on the chart. Actually, it's not here. I believe the town's pole is right around 14 feet. The pole itself is 12 feet, and then the fixture is about 48 inches tall, which makes the mounting height of the optics right around 14 feet.
Okay, next question, why can't the town lights use the same temperature lights as the Pepco provided lights, or at least a temperature closer to 400 kelvins?
Well, I mean, I think that's really up to, that's a choice with the town, Ivy. I mean, the vendor can definitely supply a light fixture with a lower cover temperature. However, I will caution, if, and I think you said this before, you've already established this color temperature in the town center there. And then on both sides of it, if we do that, we're going to be introducing a color temperature that's going to be slightly lower than what's already there today. Is that a big deal? I would say not necessarily, because you're going to be tying into the Pepco utility company lights, which are also already a lower color temperature. So really, I think it's up to the town to determine what color temperature you would like to have.
So, and I don't have the background to know sort of what went into the town's decision to get the color temperature we have now. And we have some incandescent lights in our system. We're converting them to LED, maybe 10 to 12 a year. And we could certainly look into it. But
I mean,
I certainly wouldn't recommend that we change out the current light heads at the town poles in the town center. Again, I think we have about 16 there.
mm-hmm.
So it would just be introducing new town lights at a lower color temperature.
I mean, basically, initially when LEDs came out, everybody thought that they were so great because they provided this white light. You could really see well with the light. But as we started converting these roadway applications to this white light, we've realized that there's some downfalls to that. And one is, in particular, is this white light does have an effect on the nature and the surroundings, and also the sleeping patterns as well, because it is brighter. Is it a good light to see? Yeah, absolutely. You can see very well with it. But we have to keep that in mind. You don't necessarily need to have it at white to meet these recommended light levels that the Lumen Engineering Society has established. You could have a lower color temperature and still meet these light levels.
So how discernible will the difference be? I guess guess that's the crux of this discussion about the two. I imagine that you can see a difference. So we have the town center that has the higher color temperature.
Mhm.
And then if we sort of remove away from that, we'll have the law. How significant will that difference be? Is there a way to describe it that can give us a picture of that?
I mean, the way I look at it is it's kind of like equating it to what you have in your home generally in a
Between an incandescent and a
yeah, I mean,
LED, okay.
yeah, like when you're like on a workspace, when you're looking in your workspace, you have a lot of light falling down on your workspace. You can clearly see everything on your workspace. But outdoors, we typically in the past have always wanted more of a yellowish light because we don't want to cast all this light off to the side out to the the nature and affect people sleeping patterns and whatnot. So it's more yellowish. It's not as bright. I guess if you want to look at it in what do you think here? What would be an example? Like daylight, I believe, is right around 6,500 Kelvin. So that's what we shoot for if we're trying to produce light levels that would match the outdoor setting during daytime. It's right around 6,500 to 10,000 Kelvin. Okay. Obviously, at night we don't want to match that. It's not appropriate for nighttime usage. And we do look at that all the time when we do underpass lighting at night for pedestrians. You could say, oh, let's make it really bright, like daytime. The problem with that is then we start creating these whole other issues for pedestrians, not blinding the pedestrians, and then they can't see off the trail. In this case, they can't see off the trail for somebody hiding in a bush in the very dark areas. Okay. So we kind of tone it down a little bit. You make it a little bit more uniform. So you're not too bright for the fender to see you. And it's not too bright that's blinding you that you can't see the fender. So it is something to consider. But again, I mean, as you stated, you already have the 5,700 Kelvin in that town center. And as you move away from it, you will at some point drop down to the 4,000. But if you think about it, 4,000 is still not dropping that much. There's not that significant of a difference between 4,000 and 5,700 Kelvin. 4,000 is definitely not a high pressure sodium, what we would think of as a yellow light. It's still in the white light area. 5,700 is actually towards the blue.
Okay.
Does that kind of explain?
I think that addresses the follow-up question that I'm seeing here as well.
I also saw, going back, there was a question about, was solar power considered? I don't know if you wanted to address that, Ivy, because that wasn't something we were asked to look at.
No. There is solar lights at the very north end of Riverdale Park Station. They're on poles that are at least 25. There's a pedestal, and then there's a pole that at least one of the staff in DPW thought was 25 to 30 feet high, and you had a light on top of that. That's extremely bright. It would be extremely costly as well for the length of the trail we have to light. The developer, and I haven't had a chance to have that conversation. The developer just installed 3 solar lights north of Woodbury. Everything else from Woodbury to Wells Run are the pedestrian lights. And I guess I don't know the color temperature of them. Do you know that, Jeff?
I don't. I did see the picture. I did see the pictures, and they do look a higher color temperature. I would say my estimation would be right around 5,000 Kelvin.
Mm-hmm.
I would say too, with the solar lighting, you have to keep in mind you have to have a battery pack for backup on those days where you have a lot of cloud cover, dark skies. Say you have a lot of rainfall that day, or very dark days, or even in wintertime when we have a lot of dark time. You need those battery backups to keep those lights going. So that's another cost associated with this, the solar as well. We me and Hunt has looked at some projects with some. We were asked to look at solar for the National Park Service on a couple times, and we found out that at least in their applications, they just did not work very well. And again, that was because of issues with tree canopy blocking the cells, as well as the batteries not being efficient enough to provide the keep them running basically when they needed to be.
Yeah, I think that explains why the lights, those solar lights at Riverdale Park Station are so high, trying to get above that tree line between the development and College Park there.
Yeah, that would make sense. Okay.
Can you describe the transitions one would walk along the entire trail with your proposed design? Can you describe the transitions one would walk along the entire trail with your proposed design? I'm assuming that's still referring to color temperature difference?
I think so. I'm not sure,
If
but
not,
that seems like it to me.
okay, if I'm misinterpreting that. So Karen, can you elaborate? Directly, you don't have to go through the chat if you don't want to.
There's a response in the chat.
Yeah, hey Ivy, it's Ryan. Yeah, that's what I was asking about the transitions. When it seems like the whiter light is focused around the transition areas where there's existing town center lighting, and then the high pressure sodium is kind of more in the middle of the trails. I guess a real stark difference that I'm thinking of is where the Park Station townhouses are. There was for a long time the trail was blocked off while it was in construction. So you're going to go from that Washington Globe style light that's probably pretty white that the developer installed, and then it'll go to the town lighting. So I think based on this design, it would go to the Pepco high pressure sodium lights, which are going to be like that orange light. Those are like some of the significant transition areas I was thinking that you're going to be able to tell the difference versus if it was something else.
Just to make clarify, so we're not proposing high pressure sodium vapor lights, but
the color temperature is similar though, even if they're LEDs.
Really? Okay, I understood it was starkly different, actually.
Actually, they are. High pressure sodium is more in the 2300 Kelvin range, and these lights the Pepco's providing are the LEDs are actually 4000 Kelvin. So they are white. They're not yellowish.
So I walked a portion of the College Park Trail north of Riverdale Park Station, and it's a very soft and you say warm light. Those are sodium vapor. There's also a lot of ambient light sort of assisting that because there are houses on either side of that trail at different points. And so it's a very different feel and look in terms of high pressure sodium vapor lights and even the LEDs currently in town.
I guess pictures or some examples of areas that this is going to be similar to. Was that looked at, like areas that are already built along the trail? Because like the Metropolitan Branch Trail has lighting on it, and some of the other trails are now starting to see lighting. So is this based off of any of those types of lights?
I mean, we had Riverdale Park Station as the closest example.
And let me also point out that,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna point out one other thing, Ivy, and that is because we're bound by the Pepco utility company, or utility company Pepco providing these lights. There's not a whole lot of flexibility that we have here. So I understand the question, and yeah, I could. There's a number of locations we could look at and compare, but we really, unless we're considering changing this completely and going with a completely town-owned lighting system, there's not a whole lot that we can do with Pepco. Pepco is, they're their own entity, and this is what they're going to provide. They're not going to provide us with anything different.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting to change the design. I'm just trying to understand the current design that you have. I think we're getting into the colors and temperatures. Like, what really does that look like is what I'm trying to understand in these transition areas.
I'm not sure if we could. I would have to look at this. I'd have to look back at that and see if we can't get some photos of other areas. I'm not sure if we can.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we can get
think-
photos of areas where we have Pepco lights, and I know we've got photos of areas where we've got similar to what, you know, what the town has today. I don't know if we have them as a transition where we could see how it looks with them together.
Yeah, I just think we're talking about such little differences in temperature color. Like
Yeah.
when you look at the two and when you're walking along the trail, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm just trying to understand that.
Yeah, and I do think that because these are so close, they're not going to be that. Basically, what you're going to see is you're going to see a white light and you're going to see a blue light. That's the simple way to say it. If you wanted to see a yellow light, we'd have to drop this down to, you know, closer to 3000 Kelvin. There's not.
So, and that's a starker difference than between the color temperatures differences between the town and Pepco. I mean, very noticeably a different. The next question coming from Facebook, are the lights on all the time or motion activated? Will there be emergency call boxes installed? So that's actually a good question and one that we haven't discussed. And that could be done separate from or following or at the same time if we can get enough information and depending upon the cost. And I'm not sure if they have them elsewhere along the trail. So I want to start talking with College Park and Hyattsville, because if they do, they can give us a clear path to how we might get them and get them installed. So this plan proposes lights that would come on at night and stay on until sunlight.
Yeah, and the section that we just did for the state highway administration, that does not have call boxes. Now I will say that, and I don't know, maybe that's why they wanted it, I don't know, but the town did ask for a conduit system, an empty conduit system with hand boxes installed for future use. And that may be what they're going to use it for. They didn't indicate what it was for, but we did provide that for them.
Okay, I passed over a question. Did you answer the first part of that? Yeah, in terms of it being on. There was a question about whether the trail will be closed during the process. I expect to some extent it will have to be when the lights are being installed. I'm not certain that it's the full 6 to 8 weeks, but I will inquire of Pepco.
Yeah, I would expect them to close spot locations to install lights on the utility poles, but that's going to be a pretty quick process. I mean, it's not going to, it definitely would not take as long as it would be for a contractor to install the town's lights. That's going to take a little bit more because it's going to be more involved because we'll have the conduit has to be built. The underground conduit and the hand boxes as well with all the wiring and all the connections. The power company's part is, just stick a lighting arm on the pole with a fixture, which they'll have like a bucket truck to do that, and then it'll just tap into their already existing wiring system that's there. So it shouldn't be as significant.
I have another question. Can you discuss compliance of these fixtures with International Dark Sky Association standards? And also the possibility of shields for the southern houses that are seeing a lot of intrusion?
Well, neither one of these fixtures falls on on the Dark Skies, International Dark Skies website. They don't support either one of these or recommend either one of these fixtures. So I guess, and again, we have no flexibility with Pepco. Pepco's gonna provide whatever they, what they have in stock. I will say the town's fixture, I mean, if we wanted to go that route, we could select a fixture from the recommendations provided by the International Dark Skies Association. We have done that before in Washington, D.C. We did a project that was an award-winning project for DC, where we analyzed a number of fixtures, and one particular fixture that DC chose was a fixture that was recommended by the International Dark Skies Association, and that fixture does have a considerable amount of cutoff light. I think I don't have the photos with right now, wasn't ready to show them, but I think Ivy, you have those. I think I gave you those photos of that project where the light cuts off right at the edge of the path. But again, that's a completely different style fixture. It's not a Washington globe. So you would be changing the aesthetic or the appearance of your fixture if you went with something like that. So,
And it's the objective of most of them to, like you said, to aim light directly
down right at
onto
the path.
surface. Yeah.
And I will caution that did cost the DC a lot more money because the pattern of illumination was a lot smaller because we couldn't, the spacing here has to be increased or has to be decreased, sorry, because this longitudinal pattern of illumination actually goes down when we change those optics to force that light directly down on that path. That makes this pattern a lot smaller. So that increases the number of fixtures. Thus, the cost of the project goes up considerably.
And so the image that you shared with me, and unfortunately, I don't think I can put my hands on it directly, had the light cutting off at the edge of the pavement. And there was a wooded area on either side of that trail that was pitch black.
Yes.
So from a safety point of view, I think we've compromised the situation a lot to do that. We have wooded areas on either side. We have a railroad track south of the Queensbury, south of the town center, railroad tracks on one side, and some vegetation on the other. That's pretty dense, and so the trail would be lighted, but the area immediately beyond it would not.
That's correct. Yep. And I don't, if you want, Ivy, I think I just found the photos. If you want me to bring them, I can bring them.
I think you should, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so this is the path, and actually there was pedestrians out here at night when I was here.
You might have to close,
Oh,
stop sharing, and then reshare.
Oh, okay, let me try that again. Let's see here. Let me see, did it share? Is it sharing the image?
It is. It
Okay.
is.
Okay. So this particular fixture, as you can see, this is called Klingle Valley Trail. And it was a path that it was actually a roadway that was converted into a pedestrian trail, a path, and it was heavily wooded on both sides. There's some streams out here, we had some some decorative bridges that were built as well to mitigate over the stream. But as part of this, we had to put in pedestrian lighting for nighttime usages. And you can kind of see here, let me see here, there's a lot, you can almost see them here. There's a lot of fixtures that are needed to light this trail. You can kind of see the line of them right here. But you can also notice that the pattern of illumination right here, it's very tight. It literally is right at the edges of the trail. There's hardly any light. It's going back in the woods. It does have some, but and by the way, the National Park Service was on this side of the trail, and they were adamant they didn't want any spill lighting, and they were happy with this. This met their needs. Ultimately, any deer or anything, raccoons or whatever else, were not disturbed by this particular lighting. And at the same time, I did stop some pedestrians and I asked them about the lighting, and they were ecstatic. They couldn't believe it. They felt safe. They finally felt safe at night. using this path, they weren't worried about somebody jumping out and robbing them. So, but I will say, Ivy, this path did not have the call boxes at all. So that wasn't something that came up.
Okay, get back to
But-
the question.
Oops. Nope. What happened there?
Councilmember Siddiq, I understand your hands up. Did you have a question?
Yes. Yes, I have a couple of comments. First of all, I'm very excited about this project. I think adding a large level of safety to that very dark area will be tremendous. But I have to say, I'm deeply skeptical on the question of anyone caring about color intensity. I can understand color temperature in your house. You might want to control that. But not only do we have multiple different color temperatures out there right now, it's fine. If I'm walking at night, I want to be able to see where I'm going. I'm not really caring about my color temperature. Darkness is bad, light is good. And if I walk out on my porch in a couple hours and look around the neighborhood, I'm not going to see two houses with the same color temperature, and it looks fine. It's not dark. And that's what I think we ought to focus on, is bringing light to what is right now a traveled area with no light.
And by the way, I want to point out, thank you for that, but I want to point out these are 5,000 Kelvin. So if you were looking for some intensity, what would this would look like? This is 5,000 Kelvin right here.
Okay, I think I've gotten through all the questions, and if there are additional questions, please raise them.
I have a few follow-ups if nobody else does, but I will give other people a chance to ask the questions first.
This is Ryan McAllister again. I guess I'm still having trouble understanding what's actually been designed. That picture, Jeff, that you showed, is that what you've designed in the plan, son?
No, that was an example project that we developed for DC, for District of Columbia, that was actually constructed.
Okay, so then, yeah, do you have any other? Yeah, I got your email on Friday, but I wasn't able to download the plan, so I'm just wondering that was the first time I saw the plans. So I'm just wondering, like, in one picture, do you have that you can show us what you've designed, Jeff?
So you talk about the effects of the lighting that's proposed in the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think that picture did a very good job, but if that's not what we're getting, I'm trying to see what was on.
I
was
see
on
what
the
you're
plans
saying.
there.
Yeah, I do not have anything on right now. I can go back to the lighting vendor, and I'm certain they would have some examples of what a 5,700 Kelvin temperature would look like, and what the Pepco's roadway style light at 4,000 Kelvin would look like. But I don't know if I have anything there on file that would show it right now.
Well, if they're Pepco fixtures, they're probably somewhere else in this area, right? I mean, I would think it doesn't have to be like
Absolutely. Yeah, there.
this. It just has to be something that's already built. That way, I think people have a better idea.
Yeah, I didn't see them in the section of the College Park Trail that I walked last year. I don't know if elsewhere along those trails. I know they're intent to have Pepco converts the lights to LED. At least that section of College Park lighting is on Pepco poles.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. That's why I was trying to understand the differences. You go from what's the trolley path in Calvert Hills, which is more like a warmer light, and then you go through the park station, which has a brighter white light. And then again, as you go immediately when I go onto the part of the trail that the town's gonna be putting lights up, what is that gonna look like? Because you're gonna be walking through those three different areas. I think as long as it's consistent, if you're doing certain sections with consistent lighting, it's not that we have just random poles that are different colors or different lights.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand, in the different sections as you go down, what that's gonna look like.
So that is a scenario where it's consistent south of Wells Run until you get to the new lights, according to this plan, right outside of the town center. And then south of Queensberry, where we'll have 5 lights, and then it will drop down to the lower Pepco color temperature. So again, in College Park, they intend to, and may be well on their way to converting the high pressure sodium vapor to LED, the same LED lights we're talking about, because those are the only two options that Pepco has.
When you say College Park, you mean in the area at the university?
Immediately north of Riverdale Park Station.
Yeah, the university, they are in the process. I believe Pepco's already converted those lights to LEDs now. That is our project, by the way. There's going to be SHA roadway lighting structures that are going to go in there as well. Those are in that up in College Park area. Those are 4,500 Kelvin. There's also going to be pedestrian light structures are going to go in, the same ones that the university has now. They're a little bit different than what, yeah, they're not the same as what we're using, a Washington Globe. They're a little bit different. And I believe they were, I got to check that now again, but I thought they were actually close to state highways color temperature, which is around 4,500.
So Jeff, this is John Listician. You can get some photos. I think that was the request. And then what we will do is we will post those on our website as soon as we get those. So members of the community can see what the different examples are.
Okay. I was going to make the same suggestion.
And the sooner that you get those for us, Jeff, the better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that ideally we would also like some locations where people could go at night and see what it feels like underneath the different lights. Because sometimes photo on a website can display differently on different computers. So actually having a place to go and look at it might be a good idea.
So again, I would start Riverdale Park Station up through College north of Woodbury, where you'll see the high pressure sodium vapor if they haven't changed those out to LED. At least for one experience in terms of a transition.
And we will certainly do that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
And we'll list some locations on the website as well.
I could, off the top of my head, I think, I mean, I'm not sure about in the area of the town of Riverdale, but I know in the city of Baltimore, the Washington globes that they install in the city, they are high color temperature, and I believe they're right around 5,700. So that would probably be a good example if you want to see what those would look like. And again, I think it was already said once before, the Pepco lights I think are being swapped out, and they may have already been swapped out along US 1 in the College Park area. I know also Pepco was installing lease lighting, or what we call lease lighting, or utility pole mounted lights at let's see, US 1 and Suitland Parkway, and that interchange as well. That was another one that I recall. But I'd have to, if you want me to provide photos, that yeah, I can do that. I just have to go out there, and we'll have to send somebody out to get the photos.
And I believe there's some more questions in the chat.
Actually, I'm looking, Ms. Huff just, I guess, echoed the point she made earlier that the color temperature should be consistent if possible along given sections of the trail. Otherwise, the differences will be glaring. For example, not having Pepco lights along a section of the trail with the town provided light with the different temperature in the middle. But it sounds like all of the Pepco lights will be in their own section of the trail, so the differences shouldn't be an issue. If I overlook some.
Just right above that, I think Dan has a question there. It says it looks like the plan. Looks like the plan includes a lot of Pepco poles and lights, with switching to the International Dark Sky recommended lights for only the town supplied lights make much of a difference in light pollution.
Okay, I actually thought I read that one, but okay, thank you for that, Jeff.
It would, yes. I mean, the simple answer is for those residential property lines, most likely it would limit the amount of light pollution. But I want to say though, in the areas where we have the light trespass or light spill on the south side, that is coming from the Pepco lights. On the north side, it is coming from the town's light, but it's very, very limited. It's literally, the light spill is barely over the residential property line. I mean, it's not, in my mind, it's not something that, you know, I would consider start changing fixtures out just to accommodate a little bit of light trespass. I mean, just because another I would caution, and because now you're going to have another fixture you're going to have to maintain, and then what do you do with the rest of like the town center and anywhere else where you have this style light? Are you going to start changing them all out to the dark skies fixture? Because that could be expensive.
Did I catch everything else?
I think so, Ivy.
Just a point here about the wooded area being very dense and filled with poison ivy. We've been trying to keep it cut back as much as possible. And we'll need to continue doing that, maybe even to the extent we can push it back even further.
I'm going to sort of dive in with a question or a comment that I had that's following on to Dan's question about the difference in light pollution for switching to dark sky recommended lights. So Dark Sky Association recommends a particular set of lights. And I actually spent a fair amount of time on their website a few weeks ago. And they gave as an example of some bad lights, some lights in some town in Kansas. I think it was Mechanic somewhere, Kansas. And I spent a lot of time on Street View trying to find those lights and comparing them to our lights. And those lights actually had no opaque cover on the top. So they were globes, and it was glass globes surrounding the light in all directions. And so they're definitely spraying a lot of light into the sky. And so, okay, we don't have them that bad because we have the opaque tops of our lights. And so my question was, you know, Dark Sky has some set of recommendations. How bad are our lights compared to theirs? Is there any way that we can say, you know, okay, our lights put 20% more than meets their recommendation standard, or 40% more going up into the sky? Because I think the ones in Kansas were, you know, ridiculous. They were, you know, spraying all that light into the sky for no good reason. And so that's sort of question number one. And I have some very specific design questions coming after that.
Okay, so it's difficult. I want to make sure I say this right. So it's difficult to see or quantify visually how much light is going upward. Okay, IS established criteria for how much light goes up, and the town's fixture is actually middle of the road. So it's not a dark skies fixture. However, it's also not like you're saying like a fixture you saw in Kansas. It does have a cap, a top on it. It does have LED optics that force the light down. But when I look at the debug rating, which is a new method for Illuminating Engineering Society to look at how much sky glow you have, it does allow what we would consider as the middle of the road. So it does allow some. I would say that, you know, we could definitely look at another fixture and basically that's just changing the optics in the fixture. That's not actually changing the fixture you have right now. It's just changing the way the LEDs are positioned inside that housing to get more of the light to go downward instead of allowing so much to go upward. That's a relatively, according to the vendors, that's relatively easy application or easy thing to do.
So it would look the same, but have better compliance with putting the light down.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting idea all by itself. And can the older fixtures over time potentially be retrofitted to do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
You
so
see that
that
all the time. Mhm.
so that's something that we could think about, is basically bringing all of those pedestrian style lights over time to be better about putting more of the light towards the ground and less towards the sky. Okay. Second question is about the southern lights that have a significant trespass onto their, or southern lights that trespass onto the adjacent properties. And I asked earlier about shields for those lights. And I think for 3 or 4 meetings now, we've discussed the fact that yes, we could put some shields in there and improve the situation. And in fact, the trail is, directly underneath. So even if you cut off like 2/3 of the light heading towards the edge to keep those backyards dark, then I think that the trail would still be extraordinarily well lit in that area. So are there Pepco barriers to that? Are there technical barriers?
Pepco does offer a shield. They will do it. But I want to caution, can I say that's going to correct the problem? I do not know. That the problem where that lies is we can't model that because the vendor does not have a file that we can plug into our software to actually model it with a shield. Sometimes a vendor will test their fixture with those different types of components. This particular fixture, they did not, so I don't have that to actually test it. It would be a trial and error. You'd have to go out, ask Pepco to do it, and then see what happens. We could take a light meter out there. We can go to the property line and measure the light levels at the property line.
Okay, Laura had a follow-up question, says, is that related to the type of fixture, that 1 to 5 rating? I'm gonna jump in with my answer just because I think I know what it is. Those were a 3, and I think if they were 1s, it would be a lot, like 1s or 5s, can't remember which, but if they're one of the extremes, they're stretched out more would be better. But again, that's not something that Pepco offers. So we have to, I'm trying to figure out what we can work within Pepco. Okay, if we go all the way, can you put the plan drawing up and go all the way to the southern boundary of town?
Southern, and you need me to share it, right? Let me see here.
Well, I don't, but everybody else does.
Share. Let's bring that back up. Okay. Share. I think we're at this. Yes. Oh, wait a minute. Southern end. Here we go. Are we talking down in Garfield Street? And that's
Madison and Harrison, very sharp corner there.
Yes.
So southernmost location. So fixture number 3 is putting most of its light actually on the street and not onto the path. And it looks like the path, based on the blue lines, are 0.15 foot candle, as I read the drawing there. And so they are overlapping over the path. And so presumably, I'm looking at the overlap between 2 and 4. So presumably they add up to be 0.3 at least over the whole region. And since the 0.3 seems to be the boundary, it looks to me like we don't need the fixture on light 3 in order to light up the path.
Let's see here, is that? There might be, and I'm pretty sure there will be, but anyway, if we eliminate this fixture, and by the way, let me explain this fixture. This is existing today. Only thing we've done is we've recommended, since we're going to have all these other lights added to these utility poles, we want to be consistent. We want to upgrade this one to an LED. That's all we're recommending here, not a new one. Okay. And again, I believe this is here today not for the path. I think it's really for this curve. Again, I don't know much about this. We didn't talk to Pepco. I'd be hesitant to just simply take this out because there may be some other reason why this light was here.
So it's a new fixture, but not a new light that doesn't exist right now.
Correct. Yeah, it's there today. It's just a high pressure sodium right now. We're recommending LED. I will say this, looking at these templates and how they're overlapping in the overlap region right here, we would have a little bit of a dark spot right here. But it's not going to be really noticeable, to be totally honest with you. Preferably, let me give you an example. We want the green areas, which is the average right here on the templates. We want them to slightly overlap. That's like a perfect scenario right there. This particular one, this blue is half of the average, or I mean half the min. Sorry.
Well, the green is labeled as being 0.3 foot candles, and so
yeah, that's the minimum. Sorry, I misspoke.
Right.
Yeah, that's the minimum.
And
then
so
we show half the minimum in the blue. That's what that is.
Right, but half the minimum, but there's two lights that are overlapping with that, and so it's going to be, the minimum in between those two is how I add it. It adds up the two profiles add over the top of each other. But it's as you say, that light 3. I lost track of the number. Sorry. Is an existing light. It's just going to make it a consistent appearance along there. So I'm okay with that. So that's fine for that question. So now let's go to the entire opposite end of the project, the very northernmost light up at Riverdale Park Station.
So
that's at Wells Run is the
35.
Right, 35. I've been talking about 35 for a long time with during this project, and part of what I'm sort of thinking about is looking at the pattern of existing lights up there, and as you can see between the existing two lights that are just let me get my directions correct here, just to the east of 35. Then they again have that same overlap that you mentioned. So it's at the 0.15. It overlaps to give you 0.3, and there are lights going up the path that are more or less a consistent pattern from there that were put in by Riverdale Park Station. That again barely, eyeballing it, barely overlap and give you maybe the 0.3, maybe a little bit less than the 0.3 foot candles at some points along the path. But there is a consistent aesthetic along there of a certain level of light that I think might be a little bit lower than you are seeking to achieve along the path south of here. And that kind of makes sense because it's also, an active residential area versus the path further south being a little bit more, backside of houses and things like that. And so it would be my suggestion that we might want to just eliminate light 35 and let the existing lighting, which no one, to my knowledge, has complained about in Riverdale Park Station, just take over at the position at the southern end there.
Ivy, we talked about this one, right?
Yes.
And I did go back and I modeled this again. I added the existing light that's to the, I guess it's to the north here, on the roadway, actually, not for the path. And I did notice I took this out, and what happens is, depending on where we want to stop the lighting for the path, there is a slight dark spot because I guess what the developer was trying to meet for the light levels here is different than what we're trying to meet on the path. So right. I was, these are spaced a little further apart. So yes, when I took this away, there was a slight dark area right here, and then the rest of this path really isn't lit well. So I mean, again, it's really up to up to the town. I don't personally have an issue with taking this away, because again, I agree that this does have a lot of coverage and will light this. But again, it just has a slight dark spot right about here. So
Yeah, I think that there's on the eastern side of the street, I think there's a light there also. I'm going to Google Street View up
yeah,
now.
it's right about where my cursor is, somewhere up in here, I think it is.
Yeah, and so that casts a little bit of light down there, but it's
Yeah,
definitely not.
I did add that back after we developed all this, and then Ivy brought this to my attention, and we did add that light in now in our model, and we reanalyzed it and noticed that if I took this light away, there would be a slight dark spot. But then again, you know, I wasn't exactly sure where to end this lighting in the first place. I mean, we just defined that as wells were in place, but you know, could that be back here? Could that be back here? The bottom line is we could take this out. There's, you know, and this light over here will provide illumination of the path. That just, like I said, it'll just be a small, very, very, it'd be hard to even notice the dark area that's here. It's not even going to be that dark. It'll just be slightly darker.
Okay. I think that those are my my questions.
Okay. I'm back in the chat, and Laura pointed out these wooded areas are not very. Hold on a minute. These wooded areas are not very deep. Either is part of my point. I'm not aware of those areas harboring criminal activity. And then she provides a link to a graphic of the impact, the features. If I could share my screen. Yeah, it's not doing it for me. Can you pull up that link, Jeff?
Yeah, I can. Let me see if I can find it here. There you go.
And so the other part of the question is that related to the type of fixture, that 1 through 5 rating you talked about?
The town's fixture, visually, I would say, is probably in between the bad and the better. So it does cut off light, but it does allow some upward illumination. It's not anywhere near the best. The best would be that example I showed earlier in DC of that one fixture that cuts off right at the edge of the trail. The very bad would be the fixture that we were talking about. That dark skies indicated is your old traditional Washington globe that had no cap, had a clear globe, and allowed it to go everywhere. So that would be very bad. But with that said, though, I think changing out the optics and working with the vendor, I think you can get the town's fixture closer to the better. I don't know if you're necessarily going to get the best, because if you notice, there's a significant change in the style of fixture when you get to the best. There's no longer a globe. So.
That's it at this point in the chat. Any other questions? Okay, Laura.
You got one.
Mr. Weaver, I just had a follow-on question regarding that type. I put it in the chat about asking about the type that you had described. That's where the light pattern comes from, that type of fixture. So yeah. With the fixtures that Pepco is providing and that the ability to shield it along the residential areas, I was just curious, is shielding more successful with different type fixtures? So is there a limitation to what shielding can do based on that type coding of the fixture. So if we were to, after the fact, want to shield something else, I think is where I'm coming from. Is it less effective with a type 3 than it would be with a type 2?
Absolutely. I mean, to start off with, the distribution pattern is more effective to control the light than the shield. The shield is just basically just a device to cut off the light on a vertical plane. That's all, but it's limited to what it can really do. The better option is to change the distribution or the pattern of illumination. And I don't.
More like applying duct tape. I mean, it's more like a duct tape solution.
Yeah, and I can actually I can share my screen here. Maybe I can. Let me see it. I can bring this website up. I can kind of show you what I mean by the distribution patterns. And again, let me just caution, these are, IS doesn't really recognize distribution patterns anymore. Even though we talk about it, it's an easy way to show what the pattern of illumination is. Now we've moved on. We talk about upward light, forward light, backlight, and all that with the bug ratings. But this is a simplistic way of showing visually what a light pattern would look like. So again, a type 1, as you can see, just if you can imagine, this would be our trail. A type 1 would basically follow the trail. It's very longitudinal. It just stays, light falls right on the trail. Type 2, we're now allowing more forward throw of the light, and there's a little bit of house side. So, and then they just keep going in that manner. They just start, kind of, as you drop down to type 3, there's a lot more forward throw. Right now, the Pepco light is a type 3. And so this is what we're modeling right now. And then a type 4, we're starting to get symmetrical. There's a whole bunch of forward throw, a lot of light trespass. And then this is what the town has, a type 5, where it's just light in all directions. And that's basically the simple way of explaining that. So yeah, if you think about it, if I was to put a shield on, say, a type 5, okay, it's not as effective as just, if I wanted to light this trail, why don't I just go up here and use a type 1? Because then I know all my light is falling on the trail and there's hardly any light going on in either side. So yes, to answer your question, yeah, I would say changing the pattern of illumination first, then applying the shield. But in this case with Pepco, unless somebody's willing, unless there's some way to twist Pepco's arm per se, I don't think they'd be willing to change their light, because that's the one that they keep in house, they keep in stock, and they supply all over their supply area. And if they were to start entertaining different towns and municipalities, whatever, their particular fixture, then they would have to have a massive warehouse of all these different fixtures, and I don't think Pepco is going to do that. So I don't want to speak for them. I just know from a lot of the lighting we've done with Pepco, they are pretty rigid. They don't offer much flexibility.
Any other questions? Okay, so we have a couple of follow-up items, locations or examples of, I guess, different sort of lighting schemes, if you will, in other parts of town. So Jeff, I'll rely on you for some of that, and I guess add locations that I'm aware of. I would encourage everybody to, at least check out what's going on in Riverdale Park Station and immediately north of that in College Park. And we'll post the information on our website probably within the next couple of days, or at least by maybe Friday, hopefully sooner. Anyone want the
So-
last word?
So from me, Ivy, you just need me to see if I can get examples of locations showing these
Right.
these fixtures in their color temperature, right?
Well, if you have some images as well.
Or some images, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah.
The manager, were you speaking?
Yes, if I can just add, thank you for the participation tonight and the thoughts and comments. This really helps the staff team refine what it is that we present to the council as options. And I will be working with the mayor to get this on an agenda. So the mayor and I will have that conversation tomorrow. And it's possible that this is on the agenda for next week. But it'll be posted on the website and through our social media as soon as things are finalized. And I just want to thank the community for coming out tonight and sharing their thoughts.
I'd like to second that. Thank everyone for coming out. Thanks to the staff. Thanks to the Mr. Weaver for coming out and explaining all this to us and discussing it. So thank everyone for participating.
And Mr. Mayor, there's a suggestion in the chat from Dan saying that it's 8:36 and asking if anybody wants to take a field trip. So
I actually took a field trip a couple of weeks ago, but I'm happy to do it again.
yes.
But it's not going to be dark for a while. Final light is 45 minutes away still.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Ms. Lewis, do you have anything else?
That's it. Again, I just echo the appreciation for the questions and comments we received tonight. Very helpful. And thank you for your attendance. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you all
Thank you.
very much.
Bye-bye.